leave it open a bit because it's a public part, so don't want to be.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, nice to see everybody again. Seems like it's been forever.
Longest Jack was, right?
Yeah. Going to phase 2 of the Mayor Standing Committee on Community Land. That sequel, yeah. First phase was pretty brutal.
But it ended well.
Ended extremely well.
I just wish the camera's on, by the way.
Well, we hope it ends well. I think it will. Is camera all spooled up? Hey, Tom!
Hi, Tom.
Good evening. Tom.
How are you doing, Tom?
Good, thanks.
Awesome. I was just saying, how nice it is to get everybody back together again. It seems like forever because we were so sort of condensed there for so long.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody.
When
Let's
I look at the
get-
parking lot, people come.
Yeah,
Of
okay.
this magnetic power.
It's just Maureen we're waiting on. Otherwise, we're good to go.
The ferry's just coming in now.
Oh,
She's
okay.
on island, yeah, we were doing
Yeah.
interviews all day today, so she might just be running in a couple minutes.
Okay. Hours left, maybe.
Oh, gosh. Anyway, I think we'll get through the elementary stuff here, and so we can move on to the rich stuff. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Thank you everybody for being here. Approval of the agenda, any late items?
There will, no, not for
Okay,
Phil.
thank you. And somebody want to approve the agenda? Not much to it. Thanks, Dennis. Second. Over there, I'll go to David. And all in favor? Thank you. Option of the minutes. Has everybody had a kind of sort of fire through those?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any outstanding changes there. Move to approve. Tom, I got. Second. We'll take Fritz this time, and all in favor. Thank you. That is adopted. Public comments? Not too many. Okay, let's give Maureen a second to come in here with this, because I think this is pretty important. And what I'd like to talk about in this, the strategy part of it is, we were pretty involved with getting Birch and the medical center underway, and I think, David, you?
Hi.
Hi, Maureen. Oh, no worries. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Welcome. So we just, we did open the meeting, we started rolling here, and we're just at new business. Absolutely perfect timing. And so I was just saying, we got busy going here, and we talked about the mandate and the terms of reference and that sort of thing, and then we got kind of sidetracked with Birch and the medical center, which was awesome. It had to be done, and it was a priority, and we told them that we would get to it as soon as we could, and I think we've come to a reasonable understanding on that. Let's hope they carry on. But it's time for us to move on, and so we've got to sort of discuss how we'd like the committee to evolve from here. I mean, we had some early discussions about it, I think, and I think we're mostly on the same wavelength. Of course, Fritz, you weren't here for early discussions on where we go from here.
I'm
So-
lost, yes.
Huh?
I'm totally lost, yes.
Yeah. There's not too much to be lost from that.
No sense of direction.
Yeah. I mean, if we did look at the terms of reference, which is probably a good starting point there. And I just happened to have them here, so I could go through some of the points. And my vision has always been for the Mayor's Standing Committee. Look at you guys.
Keep talking.
All right. For the Mayor's Standing Committee to sort of, and the original committee members here, thought that what we want to do is get to a point where we've looked at all the community lands, we sort of sectioned them off as well as we can. We decide what we want to sell, what we want to hold, depending on what, and the uses for those different lands. Because in the future, it would just be really nice. Look at that thing was up there for so long, and now it's gone. It would be really nice, yeah, if you could, thanks. It would be really nice on demand as, a housing assessment, whatever came in and said, hey, we need some single family housing. And then we could go to the map and we could say, we got this block, 14A here, and boy, that looks like an ideal situation for that. And then just throw it out and say, hey, who wants to come and build some single family homes on here, or whatever. So I'll throw it out there. That's sort of the way I think the direction should go. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful to have, not really a master plan, but some referral document that we've got that gives us some direction, as you say, Barry, when people come and request land for various purposes, that we've got some sense of an answer and how we're going to respond to it, and which properties would be available for consideration for particular uses. I think that would be really helpful.
And I think if there was some flexibility in there, I've already had some people come and say, well, what's available in this sort of thing, and say, well, this is, and that is, or. And then the other thing, to Daniel's point, is if we're going to section off a piece of property, then we have to look at the infrastructure in that piece of property and what actually has to be done to make that property marketable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we were trying to get some money off it.
Yeah.
So that's.
And I think we might have some policies
Yeah.
that sort of set the stage so that people understand what we're doing, and that the policies sort of are more of a guiding thing, as opposed to we may have a variety of uses that could occur on a piece of property.
Yeah, I don't think they have to be that hard set.
Yeah.
That they're unusable.
Yeah.
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 Oh, you see, there they are, right there. Anybody read that?
Yep.
Really, there was one down there that I thought was a little questionable. It was either the timelines in F, I thought, and G identifies targets for funds. That's more of a council decision, I think, where the money's going and that sort of thing.
And I would say D as well, just in terms of thinking about how what the valuation process would look like. I think we need to, really to address that, we need to kind of be flexible enough to be able to value, parcelization, so that when somebody comes to us or the municipality decides on a particular use for a particular area of land, really that's the time to think about the valuation process.
Because evaluation is very flexible.
It's going to be site specific.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
Site-specific and
totally dependent on what the use is. So I think it's,
and the market.
yeah.
Why not? The market is in a bit of a downtrend right now, I would say so. But that's, at least we've got maybe some kind of an idea now, just from the last little while, of what the market is, for land looks like for us. Hard to say until you actually get there. Is there anything else in there?
So, Gary, is there a logical, systematic phasing of the infrastructure? I mean, you can, is it all going up from the code, or are there certain pockets that are, how do you do that?
Well, I think that, the biggest issue right now is how much are we going to develop? What infrastructure are we actually going to put in there?
Right.
And that's where we sort of got talking to that when, we were talking with Birch and stuff like that there is no infrastructure in there. There's actually water that goes through one part of it. But lot 2, lot 3, I mean, they could be considered almost serviced.
But just on that thought though, and I think this goes back to some of the work that you did before, Fritz, is that, there was some thinking before this committee that lot 1 should be one of the first to consider for development. But, the thinking is that you know, Daniel's concerned that there's no planning
Yeah.
on how that lot would be used and serviced and accessed and all that sort of stuff. But I want to make sure that if we're going to create priorities, do we want to create it on the basis of availability of servicing, or do we want to prioritize it based on what we think is the right direction to be going, and then turn to the municipality and say, that property needs to be serviced? You know, like I think that's really the
big question.
Yeah.
That's the big
Or
question.
having a developer who buys it do this.
Well, exactly, but it still kind of hinges on, could, for example, if a developer came forward and said, I want to do something on lot one,
Yeah.
you know, could the municipality bring services to there? Is there anything standing in the way of that, for example?
I don't think so, if they were willing to support the cost of it.
Money, yeah.
Yeah, okay, but it's not infrastructure itself, like, for example, the assumption would be it would be a septic field type of development or a treatment plant, as
Well-
opposed to connecting into the
So,
sewer
I mean-
system, those sorts of things.
Big sewer, yeah.
I mean, I think that would be the very live question, I think, in terms, and that kind of goes into, you know, what are the uses on lot one, and what's the intensity of development on,
Right.
Because that would determine it. If it's like, well, we'll have two things, and the rest, you know, there's lots of room, then.
Well, I think it's a really
Sense,
important
but-
consideration,
Yeah.
because it speaks
Yeah.
directly to density. Like,
Yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
can't densify
Yeah.
that
No.
site without
Yeah.
having, a proper sewage collection system.
Yeah, and I think that would be certainly a priority for this piece of property.
Yeah.
And for this one, little one here. I think anything out here, I think is probably gonna just be unseptic.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't have the
Stuff
same
like that,
potential in
that
my
little
mind.
lot there.
Yeah.
So I don't see us putting it out
I
there.
agree.
I don't think there's
Yeah.
enough volume. I mean, like you said, it comes back.
But
to
that's the
this.
kind of thing that we should, just kinds of decisions this committee should try and make, is that if we all agree that those properties up there should just be developed with what you can do based on a septic, in-ground septic system or a treatment plant system, maybe
Yeah,
that's some of the guidelines we should consider.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that part of lot one is really, you know,
Right.
probably that lower density
yeah, exactly.
type of development.
Right.
And it's the higher.
No, I wouldn't speak against that. I mean, the rezoning, what the last council did, in that triangle, that top triangle of lot one, which is really,
This one here?
no, keep going, the one, that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the nicest
Yeah,
piece of land.
Belterra's up
Belterra's
there.
right there, that's the
Yeah.
nicest piece of land in lot one.
yeah.
And I forget, Maureen, you'll remember, what did, I shouldn't say you, zone it for?
20 units
20 units, yeah.
of attached units.
20 units
with
of
a maximum
attached.
size.
Now, is there enough
Yeah.
room there to do that with septic? I guess
I
it
would
is.
think so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my feeling is that that last rezoning accomplished a lot in terms of identifying a piece of land to be sold, a piece of land that is reasonable density, a chunk that we're leaving alone, and a piece that has so many potential uses, including light industrial, that throwing it out and seeing
Right.
what comes back from developers could be potentially quite interesting. I mean, that was in part the rationale for doing the rezoning of lot one to, have identifiable pieces of land that we could see where the interests lay. So, from my perspective, if there is agreement that the little triangle at the top and the triangle at the bottom are septic, I'm not sure what the obstacles are in terms of going forward with a request for expressions of interest. Are there any?
No. I mean, no, I'm trying to think.
I
So
think
they,
it's- yeah.
like, they're not subdivided out at this point, but there's nothing, I don't think, stopping council from having that expression of interest developed in anticipation of the subdivision. It wouldn't hurt probably, because they are so naturally separated, it's like the subdivision could be taking place at the same time. So council could say, we subdivide it into just the areas identified in the zoning, like the 4 areas, and then you'd end up with a piece of the north to sell, and the area 2 that could be a 20-unit development all on its own, and then an area 3 that's left over, and an area 1 that would need some thought in terms of,
Yeah.
you know, what approach council wants to take.
I'd like to just ask our other members, like, when I saw what the last council did in that 20-unit corner, I thought that was great, I liked it. But has everyone else seen it? Like,
No, I don't think so.
you should have a look at it and see what you think.
The other thing, I guess, the question that I guess should be asked, has there been any, previously, has there been any feasibility work done on servicing those areas with sewer? Like, is it just
Yeah.
cost prohibitive, or?
There must have been
There
with
was.
Belterra.
There was, and
Belterra
this is what
did.
I was, Daniel and I were
Yeah.
just having that sidebar
Yeah.
conversation. Yes,
Okay.
there was.
Yeah.
That would have been, what, about 10 years ago or so. So it is feasible
Yeah.
to put sewer in there, but what it is capacity right
Yeah,
now of the,
yeah, no, I get that, but I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of a long-term perspective,
Yeah.
and the fact that this is where the majority of the density is gonna go on Bowen Island, is these
Yeah.
properties we're talking
Yeah.
about. You know, maybe it is something that should be given some consideration, it's just the feasibility of servicing, fully servicing those areas to maximize the potential uses that could occur there over time, you know.
I mean, chatting with the Belterra folks, if they could redo their original decision now,
Yeah.
they'd be happy to join in the sewer system.
I'm
They've
sure they
invested a
would.
whole lot in the
Well-
septic field.
Well, you know, there's no question that there's
They could.
issues that arise out of septic
Yeah.
field types of
Yeah.
processes.
Well, some folks in Belterra would like to use that septic field because it's
Right.
a lot of land.
Yes.
They like to grow food and stuff like that. But others point out to the amount of money that's been sunk
Yeah,
in it already, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cheap though, and that's it, you just gotta weigh the cost of
Yeah.
one side of the other.
Could you,
But I think I like your idea that, you know, it should be more planning and.
Pass around.
But
I was wondering if you could even phase it, but you have,
One.
Copy some.
Yeah.
someone would like
So I guess, would we want to make a recommendation to council then about these ideas, and one being, should
They're two different
there be a
ones.
feasibility study done on the cost impacts of servicing these properties we're talking about before we make a decision about what we would favor in terms of development form?
yeah, I guess that has to be done, it can be done in conjunction with the, sort of the rezoning and looking at different things that it should be done first.
I think we need to do that for all of our community lands, both water.
Well, that's what I'm basically
And
getting
before
at.
any
Yeah.
other steps are taken,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the first step.
Yeah.
So what it would be, I think the recommendation would be to, that staff be authorized to hire a consultant to undertake a review.
Yeah.
It's an investment that we need to do. Raj and I are meeting with some engineering consultants, and part of their, on Monday, part of their experience is with water and sewer systems. And I think the timing would be good, and I can't see how we can really proceed without having that information first.
Well, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless there was a real outlier there that we said, hey, listen, you're just not gonna get a sewer system
Right.
there. And it's a separate piece, and you know there's not gonna be any more land developed around there like that.
The top one.
Yeah.
But that may also come out through the study itself, that it's cost prohibitive to put sewer in.
Well, you know, in some ways, I'd rather hear it from
Yes.
an expert
Absolutely.
party that gives us the
Because we're doing
definitive
great,
information.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think that'll form the, sorry, Fritz, go.
Yeah, I wonder if they can include a phased approach, so,
Yeah.
because like, everything is being delayed because there's never a sewer, and then
That's right.
we all expect it will be there tomorrow, and maybe not. But you could maybe have a scenario where a parcel is either, let's say, sold, and beside it is a second parcel that can be leased for septic up to a number of years, maybe 20 years or so. And in some kind of way that you don't lose the land, because if you make it permanent for septic, then you get a totally different development
Well, that's,
than if you make it
That's for
permanent for sewer.
yeah,
But then you're all waiting again for the magic start
yeah.
of the
Yeah,
sewer system.
it's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you say from, here's a development, something like Belterra, and here's their septic field, maybe you don't even have to own it, maybe you can sit on land that is from that the community holds,
Yeah,
but it has a septic field on it for maybe a maximum number of years.
yeah, no,
They
I,
can justify the cost based on the number of years. And then when the sewer would reach them, they could switch over, and that piece of land is still owned by the community. I'm not sure if it works, but it may be an interesting question, because like, this is always the catch-22, that
Well, that's what I'm saying.
it takes so long.
You know, what you don't want to be doing is spending tens of millions of dollars putting in a septic system that isn't going to be utilized within a fairly short period of time. Because then you've invested a lot of money in the ground. And
It may even help with the switchover, because then you have already clients, like customers in place, so to speak. Because in the long run, you all want to switch over, right?
yeah,
So then it may actually be easier to justify the cost of the treatment center as
I
well.
mean, and David sort of touched on it with Valterra. The other issue we have is the limited flat areas of land on the island.
That's right.
yeah,
To
for
use
septic,
that for
yeah.
septic, when it
Yeah.
can be used for other things, it's a waste.
Well, and I think it's a really good point, because Belterra, they, you know, they've had to use up a big portion of their site for septic, and you know, that kind of really, you've really isolated that land forever, essentially, until you come up with something else.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where putting together a scenario with some options really makes some sense. And I was also sort of wondering about this parcel too,
Yeah.
municipal land here, and how the system, you know, a likely system might be routed that could service the maximum amount of properties.
So there was a plan done when Belterra rezoning went forward by Webster Engineering.
Oh, yeah.
And so it essentially had the line go down,
Yeah.
you know, basically follow the water line, I think, across the old library lot
Oh, yeah.
to Mount Gardner, to essentially down to a lift station, a pump station by the works yard, and then pump it up to join past Bix where the line
Oh,
is.
yeah.
So there was a system at that point with the idea that Belterra was gonna add, and Bowen Island property was gonna develop or be slow, so, you know, it was all gonna go ahead now for 2007, when everyone was definitely, everything was going ahead. It didn't, and nothing's happened. But that was the original plan, essentially the central line come down to one station and pump it all back up to join the main line right now.
So would Gates Chapel and the school and everything be?
That was the plan, that was the
Tied
plan, I
in.
thought was that they would all, you know, be on it now.
Yeah.
Like right now, so the library lot and the Bowen Children's Center are actually two lots of a strata development that has then a separate strata lot, that's the septic system field, next to the Artisan Square septic field, so I don't know if a system would then be able to talk to Artisan Square strata and talk to, you know, if everyone else would want to join as well, I think it's worth exploring in terms of.
I lived in West Vancouver long enough to remember that when basically all of West Vancouver was on septic.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And
How
so
old were you?
when the changeover started to occur, I can remember this even when I was really young, but I can remember it. There was, you know, it was really a negative response to this idea of having to connect to a central sewage collection system, because it was a cost for one thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I think what became the turning point was the elimination of all of the issues that arise with a septic field, and, you know, the downside potential of that system compared to a collector system where everything's taken away.
Yeah.
I mean, when the reality really came home, I mean, everybody was switching as fast as they could. And I think that even though, you know, as you mentioned, the money's been spent,
Yeah.
but in the long term, a collection system is so much, just all the problems that they could potentially get into are eliminated.
Well, and
So-
the fields age, and
Well, that-
they need to
definitely.
be replaced and
Definitely.
reinvestment,
Yeah.
so, and that's why I'm sure the West Van.
So one more story. So when we first moved to Bowen Island, I came over here in '76, and we had a little house up across the road from the Legion.
Yeah.
And we had this really lovely little spot there, 3/4 of an acre tucked in, just across the road from the Legion. And the septic system was a cedar wooden box beside the house. And there was a herd of wild horses on Bowen Island at that time. And these horses came thundering through our yard and went right through the septic tank on their way out.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a little thing going on here a couple of months ago where somebody's, you know, their fields have failed.
Yeah.
They don't have enough property, agricultural property on their
Yeah, that's a big
lot
problem.
to put a septic field on. So they're gonna have to bring it in. And it's gonna be extraordinarily expensive. I don't know what their decision has been, but they can't carry on the way they are.
No.
So they gotta bring it in. So now they're saying to all the neighbors, well, listen, why don't you come in, you know, if everybody comes in, it's only gonna be X $100. Well, the neighbors are going, no, it's just fine.
Yeah,
You know, as long as you flush that toilet, it disappears.
Yes.
Who cares? So I think that's very important going forward that we, as part of the valuation, because if you look at the old library lot there, this one here, I mean, it's not very valuable without it being serviced, but being serviced, it's actually
It's a lovely lot.
a fantastic little piece of property.
Yeah, it is.
But if you've got to put a septic field in half of it, there's not that much agricultural land there to work with. Anyway, that's just the one part of it. So,
Is there a recommendation regarding undertaking a review? Is that premature?
No, I think it would be requests for proposals. I mean, we would have to develop. I'm sorry, my brain is shut down after
So to tender a request for proposals for a consultant to undertake a review or a feasibility study
the
regarding water
community,
and septic
yeah,
services.
for the expansion of water and septic for,
Expansion. Water and sewer.
yeah, water and septic.
Sorry, everyone for septics.
sort of community lands. That could be quite an enterprise.
Yeah, well, I think the first step is writing a good request for RFP. And that's where I think we would probably need input from community members.
Yeah, absolutely, that'd be great.
But first hurdle is getting to council and,
Okay.
it needs to be done. We've been bumping our head against
Yeah,
the wall for.
well, I think it really
a long
should be
time.
done.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Like I say, I think, lot 2 and 3, probably parts of lot 2 maybe need a little bit of help right now, but they can come down the hill.
Yeah.
Lot 3, of course, is almost perfectly serviced. Everything else is pretty much under control. Yeah. All right, so are we gonna make some kind of recommendations?
So my question is, undertake a review or is it conduct a feasibility study?
I think conduct a feasibility study.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that the committee recommend that council authorize staff to tender a request for proposals for a consultant to conduct a feasibility study regarding expansion of water and sewer servicing of the community lands.
Perfect. Community lines, yeah. Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I couldn't have said it better myself. If I could have.
So, having said that, do you feel like we have to wait for this before we can sort of start picking things apart, or
I think we can make a
Yeah.
lot of progress in
Yeah.
just, establishing, the logic in terms of development and types of development and phasing of development, and big picture stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the end, we will probably then draw on the engineering studies and the information about the land itself,
Yeah.
to where there's nice little packages of information for
Yeah.
each of these areas.
And just add to that, to one extent, that they feed off each other in terms
Yeah.
of if you're figuring out how to
Yeah.
service it,
Yeah.
you can input
Or else
on
it'd be
uses on
planned.
it.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
say, well, this is
Yeah.
gonna be a skate park and
That's
something else,
exactly.
well, it doesn't need much servicing versus this.
Yeah.
Well, and I think,
100 museums.
yeah, the
I'd
other,
like to sit skate park.
I think
That's
the other
so
thing,
cool.
if we're gonna talk about, like, some of these lands we're talking about, and looking at optional types of uses and forms and stuff, but, we could have two options. One, if it's gonna be developed under septic constraints, or
Yeah.
if it's gonna be on a sewage collector system, there's gonna be a huge difference in value to real
Absolutely.
estate. So,
Yeah.
the other part of it is that if the municipality decides that even though it might be, the cost may seem high for that system of collecting, the good news is that the value of the land to the developer is gonna be higher.
Correct.
Because there's gonna be more flexibility in terms of what could be developed on the site.
Yeah.
So they kind of.
And that's the balance that you gotta
Yeah.
find.
And that's
And
really
other
where the
sites,
magic is, I think.
yeah, other sites you might just say, hey, developer's
Yeah.
gonna do the infrastructure on
I think it still has to be decided in principle about what types of developments are gonna go where. But I think having fully serviced sites gives that developer within that context a lot of flexibility in terms of how they can shape that development.
it. Yeah, I think it's important to look at the different kinds of housing that are gonna go
Yeah.
in the different models
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and what would be the most desirable places for those models to go.
That's right.
Well,
Try to get the valuation up on the properties.
Yeah. And we're going to need to provide the engineer with a range of development options on the different sites, so they
Yeah.
can plug the numbers in.
Well, specifically numbers, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good. What lot are we gonna start on?
One.
Yeah, I'd say one. I mean, that's one of the policy issues, it seems like. You know, we've been talking about Lot 3 in this area because of the proximity to the cove being the last to go, and that's what all studies have been telling us. So I think we need to be looking at this, you know.
And understanding
early on.
it better.
Yeah, and because this can be lower density without the sort of huge impact low density would have here over the long term. So, yeah, I would say let's start with the westerly part of Lot 1.
Yeah, Lot 1. I mean, is this committee in agreement that we want to think about this principle of Lot 3 being saved to a later date? I mean, I think that's a principle we should maybe discuss and see how people think about that now. That was part of the thinking on previous committees, I know, from what I've read.
Historically, it has.
Historically, yeah.
You mean
So,
the remainder of Lot 3?
the remainder after the
Yeah.
pieces that we've allocated now, there's still a really nice part to that that's got a lot of potential. We don't know what it's gonna be yet, but, that's where we have, we have the ability to be creative.
Yeah, absolutely, and I also think that there's gonna be some changes in the substance of Lot 3.
Well, that's the other piece to this that I think is, we have to keep in mind, is we don't know what's gonna happen to the old gas station site,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
RCMP site, and if we leave 3 until, there's more, a better idea of what this all could be like,
Yeah,
and focus on Lot 1, that would make a lot of sense to me.
yeah, I certainly don't think we want to
Well,
rush into it.
if you go to plan it comprehensively, right?
Yeah.
And if you know what you want, and you include the parcels that maybe one day are available.
Yeah,
But then the advantage is that you can actually go ahead, because
Yeah.
what I hear is we want to develop things where there is no sewer, and where we have a sewer, we're waiting.
Yeah.
I think to me that doesn't make any sense. We
yeah,
have to make up our mind what is appropriate for the whole area, and if a component can start, well, let it start. Because this is endless, We waited for 20 years for the sewer.
Well, I know.
yeah, but it's sort of supply, and it's not so much supply, but it's just demand, eh? And if the demand.
Yeah, but if you know what you want, and it can happen, then it may happen, right? So if you say, well, look, we're not stopping it, but we want to have a good use for that whole piece.
Yeah, I agree.
But it doesn't mean that when you made up your mind what it is, or what you expect, and one component can start, then let the component start.
Yeah.
Because it probably creates value and trust and momentum, and you know what I mean? And also.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, and the dynamics could change on that, but the dynamics could change on that lot, even though what you want to do on that lot doesn't change, but just the size
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of other
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Maureen, and then David?
I think leaving Lot 3 makes a lot of sense, just for some very practical reasons. There are 3 major projects that are going to go on that lot.
That's right.
I mean, in terms of the logistics are going to be very difficult, the 3 projects moving forward, potentially concurrently. So I don't think we should drop anything more into that mix until what's already on the go
And, I
has
think
its shape.
and that's likely 2 years, maybe, I don't know, I don't know how long it's gonna be, but it's gonna take some time for those developments to come out of the ground.
Well, if you look at the constraints that contractors work under and they build, then I would say that I wouldn't worry about it there. There's tons of them. And do you think they all start the same day? Why?
Why wouldn't they?
It's never like that, you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
I wouldn't say.
I'm not saying is that I think you have to facilitate, you have to make sure that it can happen, and you have to be ready,
Yeah.
instead of waiting and not being ready, right? Because a lot of things don't happen because they're not, there's no decisions made. We'll make the decisions of what we want. But I actually think because the sewer is already in Lot 1, I would start with imagining what should happen on Lot 3. Because then that now we have time, because it's gonna take time for the sewers in lot one for sure, right? So if you use the time well, I think the phasing should be prepare for 3, it may not happen, but at least it's ready to go, and then move into lot 1 with the plan.
But I
Yeah,
think one
as
of
long
the
as
things
we-
is there are those other pieces of land in play that we don't
Yeah.
know what are gonna happen to them. The old gas station site, RCMP site in the long run.
Yeah, but on the
That could change the
surface,
complexity.
no, what I'm hearing here is that you want a comprehensive a plan that includes all these parts, that you don't
Yes.
know what's going to happen. Well, what if nothing's going to happen with those pieces in 20 years? Right? Or an owner wants to do something that they don't want to be part of a larger vision, and they come with a proposal.
But
All
20
these cases
years is
still
not a
prepared.
reasonable timeline to think about, Chris. That gas station site is gonna be developed probably, I would say 5 years at the outside, something's gonna happen.
Maybe a lot shorter than that.
And we don't know what it is, it could happen much shorter than that.
Well, so I think we need to
So the
say
comprehensive
what
plan
it
is right.
is we want to see there.
Yeah,
Be very clear about
I
that.
agree. No, I totally agree with
And
that.
then hopefully we can coordinate all of it so it fits together.
But what
Maureen?
would we, what would
Sorry.
we, so, what would we say other than we would like that site and the RCMP site to be some sort of multi-use, high-density development? What more would we say?
Well, if the RCMP knows that, maybe they sell it, because now you create value.
Well, if that's all that we need to do, I mean, I think as a committee, we probably could, you know, make that very high-level
Yeah.
statement and then leave it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, David.
Just let it soak, David.
I wanted to talk about the RCMP site, because we're talking about it as, well, this might happen one day, but it won't happen unless somebody does something about it, and so I
Yeah.
want to put it on our work plan. I mean, we just have to
Good
start, we
Yeah.
have to approach them.
Good
So we have to approach them locally and then regionally, and Gary and Kathy and I chatted with our member of parliament about 4 months ago, I think,
Yeah.
it was quite a while ago, and she was very keen and wanted to help, and she has good connections. Now she's got,
We better hurry up.
we better hurry up.
Yeah.
She does have good connections.
Well, I think
but
it's really
kind of
important to
hard
think
for
about these, real estate is a very opportune
us. Yeah.
game. I mean, things happen, circumstances change, you have to be able to move on some of these things in a timely manner. I agree with
But
that.
the important thing about that also, though, is that if the RCMP does agree, and we've got some long-term plan where they would move, we need to think where they're gonna move to. So that has to be part of our plan as well.
Yeah.
And there's some
We
good
got some
options.
really good spots.
There's some good spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old
Technical
fire hall
services
site.
precinct.
Which is a really good point, and I like the idea, which, also comes up is rezoning properties
Yeah.
for impetus to get things going on them. I don't know how it would work with the RCMP, but if we said, listen, potential, I don't even know if the zoning is on it, or anything on
It's institutional.
it, institutional.
But is there any problem with actually rezoning it to the uses we see there? I mean, because they would be non-conforming, but existing non-conforming uses. But they,
I mean, it's federally owned
Yeah.
Yeah.
land, which enters a whole other realm of, so
Yeah.
I mean, technically it's like local government's own jurisdiction over federal.
well, in that, but so that doesn't prevent us then
Well-
still from actually rezoning it. They-
I think it might,
I think it would be prudent to wait,
yeah.
because if we want to get that land from the federal government, the federal government has to feel that it's useful for them to do so. They're interested in affordable housing. So if we already rezone it and give it greater value, then they
They're gonna sit on it.
want to get some of that value.
Yeah.
So I would
That's a
suggest
good
we
point.
wait to create value
Good
down
point.
the road a little bit.
Yeah, but
Kinda like
just for
this
clarity
wall.
though, that's not federal land. It's owned by the federal, it's land owned by the federal government, and that's really quite different.
So
Is
by
it?
kind-
Okay.
Oh yeah, there's a big difference between that.
Yeah.
The federal government has its own registry system in Ottawa for the lands that they own. And this is not part of it. This land is
Interesting.
registered in the British Columbia Land Registry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a key difference.
Yeah.
Because I think most federal land would be exempt from any of our.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Federal land, it really has a whole different
Yeah,
circumstance.
It's
around
more
it.
like crown land, where you just can't touch it.
Well, it's even different than provincial crown land.
Yeah.
It's, federal land is land typically that was owned by Ministry of Defense, for example, where they had installations
course.
from the war, and
Old
There's a
airport.
number of key sites around that are still owned federally. I'm dealing on one up in the Kootenays, which is, they call it the Dominion Coal Block. It's federal land, thousands of acres, and the reasons the feds have it is that it was a source of coal during the war.
Oh, yeah.
And they've never relinquished that. And the difference is that the first priority for any land that's in the Federal Land Registry is indigenous. So they immediately come to the table whenever the feds want to dispose of federal land.
Yeah.
It's just a different, it's a whole different game.
Understandable.
So are you saying that First Nations right of purchase, or whatever it would be, is not an issue with our piece of?
I don't think it would be, because it's not in that federal registry. It's not the same in the sense that federal land is.
Right.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate clarity around that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
has been assumed that
Yeah.
the
First
First
Nations.
Nations
First
would have
right of
first dibs
first.
Yeah.
on that land, and if that is not the case, that's a
Yeah.
material change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need a recommendation, but we already have another recommendation on
Well, it's not quite on the table yet, but the other thing is, what was I gonna say, on the RCMP, is we have to also find them an option.
Yeah.
There's no question, and, whether we stick them in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So that, because I don't think they'd give up that property willingly without somewhere else to go. Like, they're not gonna incur any expense to move for us.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a topic for the future.
Can I, before I lose the thread?
Yeah.
You touched upon another piece of land that we have that should be added to the mix, and that will be our soon-to-be decommissioned
Yeah.
fire hall.
Yes.
You know, and that's something that the committee may
Yeah.
want to add to the mix
Yeah.
to look at as well.
So that is municipal land?
Yes,
Yes.
I wasn't sure about that.
yeah.
I thought it was Mike Meals.
No, it was originally Davies property that was deeded to the municipality
Okay,
in
good.
the
Oh, that's
early
interesting.
'60s, and
Yeah,
we checked title and it's ours uncovered.
good, good.
And we have a little bit of a moral obligation to the Davies family, like, well, can't be a casino or.
Some of the family members would like to see parkland, but it really is not their decision to make. It's-
I'm not sure that's a great part
No,
of the site,
no, it's-
but it might be good for housing.
Yeah. Housing or
Might be good for the RC.
police,
Yeah.
RCMP. Perfect, yeah.
Give them a seismically unsafe building.
Tell you what, if they give us that property, we'll build them a building.
Yeah.
Is that recorded? Small building, small building.
Looks like our.
Anyway, that's great, those are good discussions, and to your point, Fritz, I think even though we don't know exactly what's gonna happen on lot 3, that we should say, here's our vision for it.
Yeah.
And
And if you contact the owners and you get
Yeah.
a response how keen they are, and
Yeah.
suddenly they're part of your team,
Yeah.
and they actually like it, then things start to happen. So I still believe that it's the most logical to start to put an effort in lot 3 and the balance.
yeah.
Because it is surplus and we're ahead of the game there.
Yeah.
And then lot 1 will follow. It will take longer. We have to wait for a report from Webster, and if that's approved by council, and there will be other
Yeah.
delays. And then they have to get the whole funding for those people are going to pay their rates for the sewer on lot 3.
Yes, they will.
Not on lot 1, because there's no sewer.
No,
I mean,
that's
for me,
right.
it's like,
Yeah.
you use what's there, and make the best of it. Like, the waiting part, I just don't get it. Like, if you wait and you hope that one day something will be rezoned, but council has all the tools of zoning. You can even have a comprehensive development.
That's
zone.
true,
People
but
have to
if
come forward.
you blow out all your property, you don't have any property, because we're very limited on property.
Well, you don't have to move ahead, you just put everything ready to go. It's your decision.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with defining what use we'd like to see on there.
Yeah, but people, you have to provide clarity too. Like, for instance, if you say, we like to see these forms of housing, and it has a certain density, and
Yeah,
people are interested in, and the sewer capacity is there, then why wouldn't you get expression of interest on it?
I think we're along, I don't think the market could support a great deal of development for
Well,
several
they can
years.
say that about everything. I just read in the paper yesterday that all these big towers are on hold because they can't do their pre-sales.
No.
Because the market is weak. But maybe next year the market is not weak, and guess what? Then you're a year behind. You
Yeah.
do your planning ahead. It has nothing to do with the economy being.
No, I'm not arguing against
No, you have to
planning.
move forward.
I'm sort of, I'm arguing to make sure that it becomes high-density, mixed-use development.
Well, it depends on
On the zoning.
council and the community decides, right? So you must start thinking about it.
Maureen?
So if we were to move ahead, what we've talked about is that there needs to be some conversation with the RCMP. There needs to be some clarification around the status of the land that the RCMP building is on. And presumably there needs to be a conversation with the gas station owner as well.
Yeah.
And if we did those three things, that would be a lot more information for us to,
Step one. Yeah.
and it doesn't involve rezoning or anything at this point, but it might be a couple of months and see where we're at with that.
Sure.
Yeah?
And then who does that? Like, what's the,
I'm,
Who has the mandate to
very
actually
connected
reach
to
out?
Mike Lightbody, who's very connected to Ben Valley,
Yeah.
Avros, and, you know, there's
okay,
some
Yeah.
interest there.
I wonder if the request should go
Street lights.
directly to Mr. Ben Valley rather than going through someone else. If he chose to delegate the contact,
Yeah.
then so be it. But going through someone who then connects to the owner, I don't think is the best route.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Mike is his official representative.
Well, then there's Amin Mohammed, who is also his right hand man.
I just want to make sure that the contact is made with the owner. And
Well, Avros doesn't deal with any of this. Anyway, this is a subject that should be a closed meeting.
but I think Maureen's right though, because, and this comes from my own experience in doing a lot of this type of work, is that you want to start the conversation with the owner directly.
Yeah.
You want that initial correspondence between the municipality and the owner directly.
it has a
It's
level of
it's up to him to
formality.
allocate who is going to represent his interest.
And you could copy the correspondence to Mike or to whoever you wish, but I think you want this conversation at the level of municipal council, landowner, not Gary and Mike. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it depends on how that particular person sort of operates and functions. But I agree with you 100%, but I don't have a problem doing that.
I think it's also a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I've already had that conversation with them, so that's sort of in, what I'm saying is it's sort of in motion.
Yeah, but to have it in motion at the level of council is something that I think would be important to be seen. So, I mean, if we've got a resolution coming up here that deals with RCMP, First Nations, and the gas station, that gets discussed at the council table, not at the committee level. And I think that there would be value in that for bringing the rest of council on board and for informing the community that this is an active engagement around this law.
But it's very sensitive.
I think that's the only other part that I would be concerned about is at what point do you want to take it to that public level?
Yeah,
A
no,
lot of these
It's
stuff-
there, I mean, this is recorded.
I know, and it probably, that's why I'm saying it probably should be in a closed meeting.
I don't think it's any secret in the community that there's interest by the owners to sell that piece of land. And that certainly is
Yeah.
out there in the
Yeah,
community.
sure.
I also think, I have to agree that a formal invitation for a discussion is, he may delegate it, but I just think it shows a level of respect to him, and he will likely delegate it, but
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know whether the community as a whole has any understanding about what the municipality's position is with respect to those lands. That's a different conversation.
True, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I don't mind reaching out, but I think this would have to be formalized through council before we went that direction. There's no question about that. But I think yeah, I think you're right. If we are looking at the RCMP lands, and the discussion has to be opened up. David, to your point, I don't think it's useful to do it at a local level. You've got to go, you actually have to go to Ottawa. I don't even think going to Surrey is going to be any help. I mean, it's been done in the past, and I don't think we've had very
Oh, no,
good
it's Public Works Canada. That's who you're
Yeah,
dealing with.
well, that's right.
You dealt with them? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
I did a few years ago.
Yeah, it's very, but like you say, the conversation has to start somewhere. There's no question.
That's good.
But Gary, just going back to that conversation we had with EMP, with Pam, she did say it was basically sort of a no surprises thing. So, talk locally, talk regionally, and then go. Just
Yeah, and I don't mind having the conversation again with the guys
Yeah.
here, especially Paulo before he leaves, but we'll get
Yeah.
the same answers we got last time.
Okay.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we should follow the process, is what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. So I think, let's see.
Is tender the right word? Should we just issue? Just to get the legal constraints.
I just hacked that out.
Well, I was just gonna wait for Kat to get back and make sure that she can pick that apart.
What about just the legal status of the federally owned property?
Yeah, I would say status, no
Sure.
constraints, we don't want to put constraints in where there aren't any.
Yeah.
The legal status of the title, you might want to be specific about.
That's
Okay.
good.
Of the title of the,
Yeah, that's good. That doesn't, I think.
okay,
Okay.
one at a time.
And what about the gas station site? Do we want to formalize these all now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same wording. again?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It won't be investigating the legal
No.
status, but,
Staff to,
initiate a conversation or something.
Yeah.
to that effect.
with the,
Is there an address?
Don't know.
uh,
Anybody know the address of that?
Oh, the
Of
address.
the-
of-
Just say no gas station lot or something. Hey, Robert, come on in.
Of the,
Hey, Robert.
at the corner of?
Yeah.
Corner of.
Stop at 1011 Miller Road.
Oh, there you go.
thank you.
How did you do that so quickly?
He's got the tools. He's got the tools.
That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got to say something about what the conversation is.
Yeah.
Initiate a conversation.
You're gonna want to whereas
No.
to inform, policy formation of the,
Of the future.
To explore,
The future.
yeah,
Yeah.
the future of the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are we directing staff to do this?
municipal relationship with the site.
Directing staff to do this?
Or,
Well, that's what I was getting at, who actually, I
yeah,
mean, these are pretty sensitive conversations if it goes anywhere.
Yeah.
is it direct the mayor too?
The mayor? Okay, council, yeah.
We're waiting for you.
The council direct the mayor and CAO.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, is
What
there
happens when I go out of the
Yeah, voluntold.
Oh, that's good. I'll try not to leave the room again.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Don't do that.
Those are good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So moved.
What about the one, the recommending council directs staff to, the one above too?
Now staff can do that on their own.
RFP or special interest? I mean, because we want it pretty wide open.
You're thinking about the top one?
Yeah, yeah, because there- maybe, if we get too prescriptive,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe, and then we can.
And then staff and council.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
do you want that one just to say staff to engage?
Engage, I think that
And-
way,
and then
yeah. rather than-
We can
so it's
figure
just
out exactly
figure out what we need to do.
but-
I like that better.
That's good.
Yeah. Because whether we do an RFP or something is driven by our purchasing policy anyways.
Okay, can we so move?
Okay, is everybody, we'll do them individually, I guess. The first one, I'll move it. Second. And, any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Perfect, unanimous. And the number 2, I'll move it. Any other further discussion? Second, yeah, David. And, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. And the last one, all in favor?
All right. A good day's work.
Yeah. Well, that's good, that'll keep
Something will happen.
Oh, you've done your work here.
Yeah.
Yes, I see that,
Tiny
yeah.
little break.
Yeah,
I'm taking a break.
you're fine.
That's out.
Who runs the meeting?
So, yeah, so I think for our next meeting, I think we'll just dig right into it. Now, as far as that, because this will be the end of the open meeting.
Yeah.
How's everybody for time, summertime?
We're good.
Pretty good, perfect. Wow. You guys are about as much fun as I am.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
This is
So,
the time to be here.
what do you think, like every couple of weeks or something like that, should we try to get together? I don't know. It's, just as,
Yeah.
start filling this out, and as we get along, we can sort of stretch it out or
Yeah.
whatever.
Keep the momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we're gonna have, bits and pieces come in at us as we work along here. There's a few things that we can talk about a little bit later that have been directed to us too. So those are gonna take up a little bit of time, not only, the ongoing planning of the community lands, but also, you're gonna see stuff directed by council.
It may
For us to look
it
at.
may get tougher to pull everybody together through the summer months, I mean.
Well, yeah.
It's gonna be,
but-
it's gonna
well,
be